It was one of those nights when everything sparkled. The chandeliers, the crystal glasses, even the lies. Inside a golden ballroom in Newport, Rhode Island, wealthy guests laughed and toasted under the soft sound of a live orchestra. Among them, moving quietly between tables, was Evelyn Carter, the maid. She wore a simple black dress and a tired smile, serving champagne as if her life depended on it. No one knew that behind that calm expression hid 10 years of silence, heartbreak, and a secret that would shake everyone in that room. Richard Callahan stood at the center of it all, powerful, elegant, and untouchable. He had everything a man could dream of: money, influence, and a new fiancée glowing beside him in a red gown. Yet beneath that perfect surface, something cold lived in his eyes. When his young son Noah broke free from the crowd and ran across the room, Richard smiled faintly until the boy rushed straight into Evelyn's arms and whispered, "Mom!" The word hit the air like a thunderclap. The music stopped. Guests froze. Champagne flutes hung mid-air. Evelyn's heart pounded as she instinctively held the boy tighter, feeling every pair of eyes on her. Richard's expression twisted from confusion to fury. He pointed at her, voice trembling with disbelief. "What did you just say?" Evelyn's lips parted, and the words came out trembling but clear. "He's not your son." The crowd gasped, and whispers filled the hall like the hiss of a snake. For a moment, no one moved. The fiancée covered her mouth. The guests stared, waiting for an explosion. But instead of tears, Evelyn lifted her chin and faced Richard with unexpected strength. Her voice trembled, but her gaze did not. "You think you know the truth," she said, "but you don't." Richard's jaw clenched. Anger burned in his eyes, but beneath it, something else flickered. Doubt, fear, pain. The silence grew unbearable, heavy like the weight of years never spoken. And just when everyone thought Evelyn would crumble under shame, she took a step forward, still holding the boy close. Her next words left the crowd stunned. "You don't even know what you lost." What she revealed next would change not only that night, but every life in that room. 5 years earlier, Evelyn had arrived at the Callahan mansion on a cold February morning, carrying a tiny baby wrapped in a faded blue blanket. The world had not been kind to her. Her husband had died in a construction accident, leaving her with debts, a newborn, and nowhere to go. When she knocked on that massive oak door, she didn't expect mercy, just work. And fate, cruel and ironic as ever, opened it in the form of Richard Callahan himself. He needed a nanny for his infant son Noah. She needed a chance to survive. At first, their relationship was built on silence. Evelyn worked hard, never speaking unless spoken to. Richard, still mourning the loss of his wife, avoided looking at her for too long. But nights inside that enormous house were long and heavy. Over time, quiet nods turned into small talks, and small talks into laughter that neither of them expected. Evelyn would tell him stories about her late husband, and he'd tell her about his fear of raising a son alone. They were two broken souls finding warmth in each other's company. Nothing more, nothing less, but the walls of the mansion had ears. The other maids whispered. The cook rolled her eyes whenever Richard entered the kitchen. Soon gossip spread through Newport like wildfire. The widowed millionaire and the maid. Impossible, yet people love destroying what they can't understand. Rumors became poison, and when Richard's business began to fall under pressure, he turned cold again, toward everyone, but especially toward her. The day he dismissed her was carved into her memory forever. He accused her of betrayal, of using his pain for sympathy, of lying about who she really was. Evelyn didn't argue. She stood there, holding her sleeping child, tears burning behind her eyes but never falling. "You'll regret this one day," she whispered. Richard didn't answer. He simply turned away, leaving her in the rain with nothing but her pride and a promise to herself. She would never crawl back. That night, in a cheap motel outside Providence, she rocked her baby to sleep and stared out the window. "We'll make it no matter what," she said softly. "And when they remember my name again, it won't be because I begged, it'll be because I fought." What Evelyn did next would turn pain into power, and destiny was already watching. Evelyn's new life began in a narrow apartment on the edge of Brooklyn. The walls were thin, the nights long, and the paychecks never enough. But she found work wherever she could, cleaning offices during the day and hospitals at night. Some people looked down on her, calling her the maid who once worked for the rich. She didn't answer. She just smiled, tied her apron tighter, and kept scrubbing. Each stain she removed felt like one more piece of her past being washed away. Raising a child alone wasn't easy. Noah was bright, curious, and full of questions about everything, including his father. Evelyn never lied, but she never told the full truth either. "He's learning his lessons somewhere far away," she'd say, brushing the boy's hair from his forehead. When Noah smiled, she saw both the man she once cared for and the hope she refused to lose. He became her reason, her heartbeat, and her silent promise that their story wouldn't end in shame. Years passed, and Evelyn built a small cleaning business with 2 other single mothers from her neighborhood. They called it Bright Hands, a name that made her laugh every time she saw it printed on their old van. They didn't have much, but they had purpose. She taught the women what she'd learned the hard way. Dignity is worth more than gold. Clients began to trust her not only for her work, but for her honesty, something rare in their world. One night, as she was folding laundry in her living room, the TV played a breaking news story. Richard Callahan's empire had collapsed. Fraud, betrayal, a scandal splashed across every headline. Evelyn froze, holding a shirt against her chest. For a brief moment, memories flooded back. The ballroom, his voice, the rain. She turned off the TV and whispered, "Maybe some lessons come late, but they come." Then she smiled, not with bitterness, but peace. Sometimes life takes justice into its own hands. That night, she looked at Noah sleeping beside his textbooks and felt something shift inside her. The past no longer haunted her. It had shaped her. "We're doing just fine, baby," she whispered. "But the world isn't done testing us yet." And when destiny knocked on her door again, she was ready to open it. It had been more than 10 years since Evelyn last set foot near the Callahan mansion. By then, she was no longer just a maid. She was a woman who had built her own life from nothing. Her company, Bright Hands, had earned a reputation for reliability and integrity, and one of her clients, a kind event planner, invited her to work at an exclusive charity gala. Evelyn almost declined until she heard the location, the Callahan estate. Her heart skipped a beat. Maybe, she thought, this was fate giving her one last chance to face what she'd once run from. When she arrived that night, the mansion looked almost identical. Same marble floors, same golden chandeliers, but everything felt different. She wasn't trembling this time. She was calm, composed, and proud. Dressed in a crisp black uniform with her company's logo embroidered on the sleeve, she directed her small team of maids with quiet authority. As guests filled the hall, Evelyn caught a glimpse of Richard across the room. He looked older, his hair grayer, his shoulders heavier. Power had left its mark, but so had guilt. Richard noticed her too. For a split second, his confident mask cracked. Their eyes met, 2 ghosts recognizing each other after years of pretending they didn't exist. He tried to look away, but something in Evelyn's calm presence disarmed him. She wasn't the frightened woman he once dismissed. She was stronger, steady, untouchable. The room felt smaller, the air heavier. Old wounds began to ache in both their hearts. Then fate, as if scripted by irony itself, made its move. Noah, now a bright teenager helping his mother serve guests, accidentally spilled red wine on Richard's expensive suit. The room went silent again, like it had so many years ago. Richard turned sharply, ready to scold whoever had done it, but when his eyes met the boy's, something inside him froze. For a brief, haunting moment, he saw himself, his eyes, his mannerisms, even the way the boy stood. The resemblance was undeniable. Richard's fiancée approached, confused by his sudden silence, but he couldn't answer her. Instead, he stepped closer to Evelyn, who stood motionless, her heart pounding. "Who is he?" Richard asked softly, his voice trembling. The question hung between them like a knife. Evelyn hesitated, her lips quivering, before whispering, "You already know." What Richard said next would shock everyone, including Evelyn herself. For a few seconds, no one breathed. The music had stopped, the chatter died out, and all eyes turned toward Evelyn. Her hands trembled slightly, but she refused to look away. "You want the truth?" she said, her voice firm but gentle. "You deserve it, Richard." "Even after everything?" The crowd leaned closer, sensing the storm about to break. Richard nodded once, jaw clenched. "Tell me then. Tell me who that boy is." Evelyn's eyes softened as she looked at Noah. "He's not your blood," she said quietly, "but he's everything you should have been proud of." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Richard's fiancée stepped back, confused. "What are you saying?" she whispered, but Richard didn't respond. Evelyn took a deep breath and continued. "You accused me of betrayal, of using you. You thought I wanted your money, your name, but I wanted none of that. I only wanted a chance to raise my son with dignity. And I did. I raised him with honesty, compassion, and strength, the very things I once admired in you before you forgot what they meant." The room fell silent again, her words slicing through the air like glass. Richard's hands shook as he looked at the boy. "You raised him with what you learned from me?" he asked, his voice cracking between disbelief and shame. Evelyn nodded. "Yes," she said softly. "Not with your wealth, but with your example, the parts of you that were still good before pride took over." Her words landed heavier than any accusation could. The crowd, expecting anger, saw something entirely different form in Richard's eyes. Realization. His arrogance began to crumble, revealing the man who had once been capable of kindness. He stepped closer, his expression changing from fury to regret. "I spent years blaming you for the things I couldn't forgive myself for," he said, his voice trembling. "I told myself you were the reason I lost everything. But maybe you were the only thing I ever got right." A tear slipped down Evelyn's cheek, not of sadness, but release. Richard looked at Noah and whispered, "Then I've failed twice, as a man and as a father." He turned to the guests, his voice breaking. "All of you judged her like I did. But she's the only one here who ever told the truth." The room erupted in whispers again, this time not of gossip, but awe. Evelyn stood silently, holding her son's hand, unsure what to say. Then, to everyone's surprise, Richard took off his jacket and placed it over her shoulders. "You deserved warmth a long time ago," he said quietly. "It's late, but I'm learning, and what he did next would redeem him forever." For a moment, no one knew how to react. Richard stood in front of Evelyn, no longer the untouchable millionaire, but a man stripped down to humility. "I can't erase the past," he said softly, "but I can start making it right." He turned to the crowd and raised his voice. "This woman, this mother, was stronger than every one of us here. While I was busy protecting my pride, she was out there building something real." The guests shifted uncomfortably. Some looked away in shame, others nodded with quiet respect. For the first time, Evelyn didn't feel small. She felt seen. Richard continued, his voice trembling but clear. "I once thought power was money, but true power is owning your mistakes." He looked at Evelyn again. "If you'll let me, I'd like to help rebuild what I broke. Not to repay you, but to honor what you stood for." Evelyn's eyes filled with tears, but she shook her head gently. "You don't owe me anything, Richard," she said. "If you really want to make it right, help the women who were like me, mothers with no voice, no home, no hope." Richard paused, then smiled faintly. "Then that's what I'll do." The next week, the Callahan Foundation announced a new project, a scholarship and housing program for single mothers. The headline read, "From Fortune to Forgiveness, a Millionaire's New Mission." Cameras flashed, articles spread, but Evelyn stayed quiet. She didn't need fame. She already had what she wanted, the peace of knowing that her pain had built something meaningful. Her small company grew, and she hired more women, each one with her own story of survival and strength. What once was just work had become a legacy. Months later, Richard visited her modest office in Brooklyn. He looked around at the laughter, the smell of coffee, the energy of people rebuilding their lives. "You were right," he said quietly. "Truth doesn't destroy, it heals." Evelyn smiled. "Sometimes it just takes a few scars to learn that." Noah came out from the back, holding a stack of folders, taller now, confident. Richard smiled at him. "You've got your mother's courage, kid." Noah grinned. "Guess I learned from the best." And for the first time, Richard truly smiled, not as a man of wealth, but as a man finally free. That evening, as the sun set over the city, Evelyn closed the office door and took a deep breath. The same hands that once scrubbed floors now held the future steady. Her story was no longer about pain, but about power, the kind that comes from grace, forgiveness, and the courage to stand tall. She looked at Noah and whispered, "We made it." Because sometimes justice doesn't need a courtroom, it just needs time, truth, and a mother's strength.